and welcome to another episode of Rugby with Pads. For those of you watching on YouTube, and probably you'll hear it if you're listening, it's probably slightly different ambience. Recording this late on a Friday night, I've had an absolute day of it, so we're going to plough on because I really wanted to do this episode for this weekend. I think it landed at the perfect time. And what this episode is I wanted to look at not only my lineups, because I've got a lot of them and I've got a lot of stories to tell about them, but also give some junctures at a bit of a crossroads. And maybe that's what we're going to call it. This is the Crossroads episode. The concept of this was taking a look at everyone in every different position, whether it be 6-0 or 0-6, and all the way through at the moment, going into a pivotal Week 7 game where buys are crazy. They will be for a couple of weeks by the looks of it as well. And just making some suggestions of what happens, because over the years I've seen so many people give up at this point in the season. We're kind of approaching halfway of the regular season. Some people think they're dead and buried, but no one's dead and buried. I was listening to a podcast earlier and there was a host saying, I've only got 2 wins, I'm dead and buried, I'm out of the playoffs. You're not. And that's what I wanted to do today. Get a bit of a hope, maybe a little bit of inspiration. I don't know, maybe that's a bit too ambitious, but you know what? This was also a little bit of a motivation for me. It's been a long day, so apologies, and I haven't got my eyes in as well. You know what? This isn't an episode where I'm going to preach the gospels of what you should do. Get these players because you're at this position. But I wanted to point people in the right direction at the very least. And it's not to name and shame, but I have asked a couple of my league mates in various leagues to offer their sides up for a bit of critical analysis as well. So what we'll do is we'll go from best to worst, because I think the best advice I can give for people who are doing really well is keep doing what you're doing, and we'll get into the meatier stuff as we go through. I'm not sure how long this will be. This is a bit of an off the cuff episode, a bit of an update episode, bit of a bonus. Yeah, let's see what happens. And to be fair, when we get down into the weeds of it, it's a little bit of a motivator for me, because I'm in 9 leagues. I'm doing well in a few. I'm 5-1, I'm 4-2, I've got some 3-3s. But the main one, and spoiler alert, my home league of record, the one I've been in the longest, that I won last year, I'm 0-6. But I'm still holding on to that glimmer of hope, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But let's start with the 6-0 guys, and I've written down some pieces of advice around all of these, and we'll go over it, and in post we'll look at a player somewhere over here or here who's doing really well or doing really badly, and look at the kind of advice that we could be giving them. So at 6-0, I think most leagues, I've mentioned it already, we're coming up to that halfway point. They're 14 weeks on average to make the playoffs. If you've got a 5. 4 or 6 team playoff in a 10-man, 6 team in a 12-man or even a 4-man. 9 wins is enough to get you there, get kind of just above that 600 record. That's where you want to be. And that's really to guarantee a spot. So you've got 3 to go. Think of it that way. And I really do think the take-home message for those at 6-0 is you can start thinking about the playoffs. That's your soundbite there. It's 3 weeks, 3 wins in the next 8 weeks. It shouldn't be a problem for a team who has been dominating by this point. You've probably got some great players, but what I would do is double down on, and we'll do an episode of this probably around week 12, for those players who you want to target in the playoffs, the ones you want to see in your lineups who have positive matchups, who are going to be great. And we can do a bit of wish casting now and a bit of forecasting, but this year has been crazy for injuries, and I suspect it to be more so. But even now we can look at in week 15, the first round of the playoffs. You might be getting a bye if you're this good already. But San Francisco versus Arizona, we're going to want our 49ers players, aren't we? We're going to want to load upon CMC. If the player who has CMC is doing badly, target him. Give him a couple of players who are going to serve him well, who are going to fix his lineup in wide receiver, tight end, and even at running back. You can take that player that he has banked on, who's not been able to perform because as well as he could have done, because all of the other players aren't. So maybe that's a one to target. Ayuk is one of those less sexy names who's doing really well. Brock Purdy, even coming off a bad week, now's a good time to go and get him if you can. Detroit at Minnesota in week 16, goes without saying, it's an NFC North matchup. Detroit are going to be going all out to win that to secure the NFC North title, you would think, as well. And Minnesota are probably going to be tanking by that point. I don't think Kirk Cousins will be on this team by the trade deadline even, and we'll have an episode on that next week. And finally, the Chargers at Denver in Week 17. I think that's a really interesting matchup because there's a bit of a grudge match there. There is a narrative there with two coaches who are on the hot seat. Maybe Sean Payton's not on the hot seat. Maybe this is part of the grand plan, but I'd be going after Chargers players. And because they're so injured all the time, you can probably get them for a penny. And it's the same way that you were trading up for CMC by giving up multiple players who aren't going to potentially make your team come week 15, 16, 17. That's the kind of way you get hold of Keenan Allen, who less sexy, but he's doing fantastic. And if you've watched our DFS opponents, TikToks and all of that fun stuff, you'll know how much of a fan of Keenan Allen I am this week. You know what? I would say a little complacency never hurt anyone, especially with a league, as big as you're looking at here in a lead as you're looking, but you can start thinking about the playoffs. So let's take a look at a team who is in a position to start looking at the playoffs. And I'm going to take a team. I'm in a league that I was invited to by UK podcast 2 Point Attempt. Fantastic guys. Go and have a listen to them as well. I'll link it in below. But I'm playing, I think it's against one of the founders, but I don't know. I've blurred out all the names, so you can't do that. But I was looking at this team and thinking, who are you going to be taking in to those week 15, 16 and 17 games? So I'm looking down the iPad while we're doing this as well, behind the scenes. You are probably looking, although last night we did have a really good performance from both Trevor Lawrence and Travis, what's his name? Etienne. I'm going to say it's Travis Etienne. I'm probably wrong there. Bit late. It's a bit late today. And Zay Flowers and Penny isn't really doing anything on the bench. Boyd is likely to fade into obscurity if Higgins really gets his act together. Freiermuth at the moment is superfluous with Sam Laporta in there as well. So all of those guys are trade assets. And as I said, you could look at Brock Purdy. You could look to target CMC with a horde of picks. For the person who has CMC might be in the fourth or fifth slot, maybe looking to make that push, maybe even lower, and looking to rejuvenate their team. And we'll get onto that in a bit. And I've mentioned before, package up some of those guys who have spike plays. Rashee Rice might be someone because you could target as leaving because everyone wants a piece of that Pat Mahomes offense. I personally don't like Rashee Rice, and this week I've gone big against Kansas City wide receivers. Take a look at the Thursday preview show if you haven't done already. But yeah, this is a good squad, and I can't really poke holes in it. Kyren Williams is out this week, which is a shame. So, you know what? Maybe they're looking at depth here, which is a real shame. So, it's a funny one. You could be at 6-0 because you have a really devastatingly good team, but likewise, you could be at 6-0 because you have Justin Jefferson, and now you don't have Justin Jefferson for a little bit. And who's to say who's going to be throwing in the ball towards the end of the season? Moving on, let's look at 5-1. My main piece of advice for 5-1 is adapt. Don't reinvent the wheel or anything, but just adapt. And in a minute, we'll be looking at one of my teams because I'm 5-1. Not to brag, not 6-0 anywhere, unfortunately. But if you've just lost your first game, like I did, see all the advice I've gave for 6-0, and just win one more. That's 9 is almost a guarantee. 10 is a definite you're in. But 8 will probably get you to the promised land as well. So you probably need 3 or 4 wins. That's all you need. Defer the celebrations for another week, maybe. But the likelihood is that you have a good team who've scored well, and you've just got unlucky with injuries one week or one bad performance. That doesn't mean be complacent, heavily complacent, but you don't have to throw it all in just because you've had one loss really here. I would say my advice to myself in this regard is focus on form, as you're more likely at this point to lose a game based on loyalty to a player that you have in lineup than that might be an unfounded loyalty as well. Maybe he won you one game or it's part of a combination and you don't want to jinx it, but the form cards don't base on that. Things change, matchups change, and you want to give yourself the best chance possible for getting those wins. Don't get complacent. You can afford to have a risk on the roster. but I would, kind of force yourself to think about later, but maybe less aggressively than the guys at 6-0. Now, let's take a look at my team. It'll be somewhere here. I haven't decided where it's going to be. And looking at this team, I've got Tua Tagovailoa. I didn't go run through the last team for the audio listeners, but this is one of my teams that I'm in an NFL league for. I've got Tua, Kamara, who's had a great start to the week. I'm really happy with that. James Cook, not really vibing that. Tyreek Hill for that stack. Brandon Ayuk, I've already talked about as being a really key player. Darren Waller, Keenan Allen, another key player for the playoffs. Brandon McManus, probably, it's kickers. Take it or leave it, really. I've got Lions. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs. Could be interesting. Nico Collins, Gabe Davis, DK Metcalf, Tyler Higbee, and the Jets. I think I've just got the Jets because I wanted to keep hold of the Jets because they've got a good run of games coming up, but I think you can let those go. You don't need to roster two defenses ever unless you've got the Patriots from 4 years ago, really. Maybe the Dallas defense from last year, who I thought were going to be good this year, but have been up and down. If they've had a 30-point game and they've had a 2-point game, it's crazy. Anyway, Miami do have a tougher run in, which is something to consider. But you could, I could look to get an absolute haul for Tyreek Hill because people want that. I don't need to be thinking about so many wins. I just want to get to the playoffs because that's all the regular season is. You need to get to the playoffs. I could trade up on the name value of James Cook with him as well, get someone good, upgrade the tight end spot to a Mark Andrews, although I like Sam Laporta. It's just I always have this thing against tight ends in their rookie season. I feel like it can't last, but I'm probably going to be saying goodbye to Higbee. I think I've already made some changes in this lineup actually already, so maybe I'll put them in the show notes. I guess my question that I put here in my notes here was, are Gibbs, Gabe Davis and Kamara good enough to get you to the promised land? I think Kamara is. Trade for Kamara, you want him. If you need wins, you want him. But based on this, I could get an absolute haul on him based on a 30-point performance this week. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about that. And I'm thinking about, CMC whilst he's potentially injured. Depth at running back is maybe a little bit of a concern here. But I've got a lot of things to be happy with this lineup. Now, let's look at where it starts to turn a little bit. 4-2. 4-2, I would say, my main piece of advice for any of you at 4-2 is don't be too cautious. You haven't got the comfort and safety blanket that 6-0 and 5-1 have, but you still have a good lineup. You've got a record like this because you've done well, and I think you've probably need to take a look at who you've lost against. Have you lost against someone having a spike week that week? I have. The one I'll show is from the Megala Bowl. It's another one of my teams. I'm technically 9-3 because they do one against the median for the week, but it's a good team. I think I'm going to have to struggle this week because of buys, but it's a good team, and I don't want to make too many changes to it again. But I don't want to be in a position where I'm trying to defend my position towards the top of the league. So I'm second in that league, I'm tied first with points against, which is holding me back. It's not fun to lose when you're at 4-2 because you can get dragged into the quagmire with everyone else, and with that you like to feel more cautious. It's not take risks. Fantasy football is a balance of risk versus reward. You want to be going after the things that are going to net you the wins. And I think it's interesting because I think inaction can be as bad as making the wrong decisions here. Just like Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Or maybe Michael Scott said that in The Office and I've just misconstrued it. Either way, this, in my position, is the worst position to be in because it's just going to breed some bad behaviour, I think, and not playing fantasy football as you really want it to be playing. It's tough. I'd say the biggest piece of advice around this, I say the third time I said biggest piece of advice, is sit on your squad the what bits are good, because there are bits that are good. You're going to have some superstars in there probably. Trim the fat and make some brave choices without destroying the core of what could be a championship roster. And it's not often, obviously we're talking about getting to the playoffs, but it's not often the guy who went 10-3 wins, because they've got a roster that has got them through the regular season. The guys who win are the guys who think early about the playoffs and the championship game and get a bit of luck on side as well. That's what you really need. That's what happened to me last year. I think I ended in fifth and snuck into the playoffs in my league of record, and then won it all the hard way by going up against it. But anyway, we'll take a look at my lineup. So for the audio listeners, I've got Justin Herbert, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon on a bye this week, obviously, Puka Nakua, DK Metcalf. You'll notice some of the same players here because in my lineups, because I favoured some of them during the draft. I've got Dallas Goedert, Imari DiMercado, who I spent too much fab on, not going to do anything. Gabe Davis, Atlanta Falcons, Sam Howell, which was a 1 week pickup, which I was very happy about. Gus Edwards, KJ Osborne, again, a fab pickup that I don't think was going to pan out. Dalton Schultz and Dallas Cowboys. I've got Jamal Williams and Justin Jefferson on the bench. That's a good team. Outside of the running back depth, which I'm not really liking, I think what you've got here is Puka's still got a lot of name value. He's worth a lot. Gabe Davis isn't likely to take you next steps. Neither is KJ Osborne. They're fill-in players, but you've got name brands in Joe Mixon. I think Joe Mixon as a throwaway pick for David Montgomery. The fact that David Montgomery's not in at the moment, but he has so much upside when it comes to touchdowns. That's what I really like. I might be looking at trade there. Puka and Gabe for someone who's struggling at wide receiver, packaging a running back or tight end upgrade. I'm not convinced that Goddard has everything he needs. That Eagles offense can be stymied because I think it was a bit more one-dimensional. You're really only looking at Laporta or Kelsey or maybe Andrews when you're looking at upgrading from Goddard. But you know what? That'll be an upgrade nonetheless. Right, we're halfway through. Let's take a little break and I will see you on the other side. And welcome back. Hopefully I've adjusted everything right so you can still hear me and see me. 3 and 3. If you're looking at bell curve, this is where most of you are, and this is where we dig into some of our submissions from some of my league mates, and we'll have a look at them in a minute. But if you're at 3 and 3, the main take-home message is, I think I can summarise it all. 3 and 3, roll the dice. You've got nothing to lose. You're in. I know we said 4 and 2 is the worst place to be because of that uncertainty, but you're in Schrodinger's position. You're neither winning or losing. It's a weird one where when you open it up, are you going to find a good roster or not? And funny we're looking at Harry's roster shortly. We'll take a look through that, and he's in. Second year player. He's done really well early on. He missed a couple of starts, but I think he really does have to roll the dice on his team. Otherwise, he's just going to go, 3 and 4, 3 and 5, and maybe pick up a couple of wins, but miss the playoffs if he's not careful. Your roster can go either way. You're 500. It's in a lock. A hungry lineup could be better than, than just relying on the same people that got you to 3 and 3. I think you're really looking at innovating and doing some stuff. I would say chop your team in half and look at the guys at 5 and 1 and above you and say which of these players in each one and look at each position, cut it in half and say if I got 2 QBs, which one of these guys would make it into the 5 and 1 squad? Which one of these guys at running back would make it into the 5 and 1 squad? All of that kind of stuff. And you will probably find half your team will and half your team won't. So that's what you want to do. You want to focus on that half of the team that will and build a core around them and build complementary pieces because you probably have something that someone else wants. And you know what? If it goes wrong, it wasn't meant to be. You roll the dice. Sometimes you roll snake eyes. Sometimes you roll double sixes. I don't know what's good in craps, but it's an interesting position to be in. And for Harry's team here, let's take a look at it. He's got Kirk Cousins, Ramondre Stevenson, who I think I both, in the same episode, I slated the pick of Ramondre Stevenson and loved it. But I think it was between him and Matt, who we're going to look at his team in a bit as well. I think it was because where they picked up and the position they were going to be in, but it's regardless. I'm still not hot on Ramondre Stevenson, and you'll see that in this week's episode on the Put Up or Shut Up preview episode. He's got Kirk Cousins, Ramondre Stevenson, Dameon Pierce, not a fantastic start. Josh Reynolds, I feel like that was a waiver pickup. DeAndre Hopkins, bit of name brand there, but not performing at a high standard. Jonnu Smith, I love that. Marquise Hollywood Brown, Evan McPherson, the Saints, Samaje P. Ryan, Zay Jones, and Njoku and Steelers. Now, I look at this, oh, he's got Justin Jefferson on the bench. That's how he's won 3. Justin Jefferson has won him at least 2 of those matchups, but his absence has lost him a lot. And this is a difficult league because it's a 14-man league, so you can't really think in the same way that you would do 12 because it's so much thinner. But you know what? Cousins is on my list to ditch. Ramondre is hit and miss, but you can probably trade high on him based on last week. Damian Pierce isn't going to do any favours. D-Hop has name value, so again, trade target. But you've got tradable assets. You've got Ramondre, D-Hop, Justin Jefferson. For those who can stash him, yeah, you've got an IR spot. But if he's going to be on the IR spot, he's not doing you any value. And if you can get a couple of players who can do value, if you can trade up for Puka, that'd be great. If Puka's playing versus Justin Jefferson, who's not, I know which I'd rather have, but the guy at 5-1 will probably want Justin Jefferson for the run home. Cousins is nigh on droppable by now, I think. You could look at Ridder or Howell if they're available, maybe even Fields if someone has rage dropped him, because I think he's still got a couple of good games left in him. And at this point, you're looking for players who can spike week. You're not looking at players who can just get you middle of the road and maybe scrape a couple of wins. You need 5 wins minimum over the next 9 weeks. 9 weeks? 8 weeks. Wow, that's a lot. You've got to do some work here. Hollywood remains a candidate that could serve you well. He's the number 1. Kyler Murray's potentially coming back, so maybe that could do well. And you could trade high on him because they haven't had the best history. They did in college, but in the NFL they haven't paired up that nicely. And yeah, they're going to be competitive in games, I think, the Cardinals. But are they going to risk letting Kyler go full out? Yes, he's been taken from PUP, but he could go on IR after that. You never know. I think Harry sent me a message saying he's had some unlucky losses, but I think the fact that you've lost a linchpin of your offense, he's on the bench, that's going to kill you. So dump the guys, Samaje P. Ryan, dump, Zay Jones, dump, and Njoku's not really doing you any favours there. And he's got a little bit of name value. You've got a lot of guys you could pick and trade up to make a fantastic team. So throw out some trades and see what you can make of it. Right, now we get into the below 500 records. And in a lot of ways, this is where I plan most of my trade. We weren't quite halfway through. I realised there's actually 7 records you could be on this one. But regardless, 2 and 4. 2 and 4 is really tough, but I think for a lot of people, the only way is up. So if you're 2 and 4, don't panic and be bold. In the same way I said roll the dice for 3 and 3, I think you need to be bold in this position and go after players that you think can make a difference. You've won a couple of games, that's great, but unless you have something special in your roster, it's not worth it. If you've won the games just based on the Dallas defense, that is not sustainable. So unfortunately, you need to think about your team holistically. Look to package your potentially valuable players up and put in bunches to have single ones you've got upside, because more than likely is you've got 3/4 of your team is trash. Unlike everyone else, you have the advantage of not having enough skin in the game to think that a playoff position is actually reachable, so you can afford to take even more risks. If you're going to go further down, no one's going to bother. If you go from 8th to 10th, doesn't make a difference, does it? You can leverage this against the guys at 3 and 3, and if guys at 3 and 3 and 2 and 4 are listening to this, think about I'm pitting you against each other here, and I think it's a worthwhile target to do, because there is a psychological difference between one loss there. I think it's a really interesting position to be in, and the way we think about it. I would keep an eye on injuries. You're going to have a decent waiver wire position, so you can get the picks on those high, value handcuffs. Although I feel, who's a high value of a handcuff these days? Jerome Ford obviously did really well, but have we seen the rest of it? Elijah Mitchell coming in, Jaden Mason. Don't think they're really that valuable in that system, because CMC is so much CMC and it's so much better than everyone else. But there are players out there. If Josh Jacobs finally comes to life, Zamir White is a really interesting pickup. Yeah, there are players that you can think about, and you can be a bit more risky with your side. If it goes to trash, draw out next year. It's all fine. So let's look at a player who is in that position, and we are going to look at our friend Matt. Matt in the same league, 14-man league. This is a better lineup than Harry's. I'm just going to put it out there, and I know these guys know each other, so fight amongst yourselves. It feels close to the position I'm in my dynasty team. My dynasty team is also 2 and 4. And if you've listened to the last episode, you'll know it's largely because I've had the most points by nearly 100 points scored against me. When I'm putting out the third highest or second highest score in a week, I come up against the the highest scorer. I've been incredibly lucky. And looking at Matt's lineup, I can only think that would be the case. He's got Matthew Stafford, A.K.A, Zach Moss, Puka Nacua, T. Higgins, Evan Engram, Rashard White, Nick Folk, Buccaneers, Purdy, Johnson, Deebo Samuel, Josh Palmer, Christian Watson. That is a really, really good lineup. I really like it. And I think you just got unlucky here. So although I said be bold, I would say it's more on the side of don't panic. You could probably do some things here. Packages with Puka and T. Higgins. T. Higgins not performing well, but name value Puka maybe on the slide. Someone solid like Chris Godwin could be interesting. Maybe you can trade up for Keenan Allen for someone who's really desperate. Rashard White is on the border of droppable, I think, but I believe Matt may be a... oh, God, I'm probably going to curse him here. I think he's a Tampa fan. Yes, I think he is. So maybe that's why he's got him there. Maybe that's makes him undroppable. Rashawn Johnson, droppable. Deebo, I think, is a great stash. Again, for the same reason I told the 6 and 6 guys. Sorry, 6 and 0 guys to keep him. Zach Moss could be on a bubble burst, so maybe shift him. Well, he's had a good week. That might be something if you can make something good happen there. But got Austin Eckler coming back to full force, hopefully. Running back is looking a bit thin, so maybe try and find a better running back out there and package up some of your good wide receivers there. This is just a good lineup, but be bold and don't panic, because I think you've got A, nothing to lose, and B, everything to gain. At 1 and 5 though, start to panic. And the second piece of advice, and this is going to sound so weird, play possum. By playing possum, you look non-threatening to the rest of your league mates, and that's when you might be able to sucker them into some interesting deals. You're a no-hoper, but you're not quite the least of hope. The 6 and 0, the playoff locks, they should be able to look down upon you and go, what competition is he going to be? He's only 1 and 5, but you might have some aspects of things they want. So use that to your advantage and maybe target them for some trades, because the 6 and 0 guys are going to have guys that are never going to make the lineup, but will make your lineup better, and that's what we really want to do. You might have players who are interesting for playoff people who are thinking about the playoffs, like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Is really good value. He's played well, but he's not doing your squad any favours, because you need that depth play. You don't, that wide receiver 2, that flex position isn't doing you. He's worth a Lockett or a DK +1, and maybe it's Jahmyr Gibbs weighing you down, but he does trade on name value and draft capital, which someone at 6-0 might be willing to take a risk on as well, especially given the playoff lineup. There is a level of emotional manipulation that I think you need to tap into here. Pretending you don't care and playing others off against each other is really key, or that's psychological warfare at this point. You don't have much hope, but you've got some. Just a little bit. All you need is a good run and some wins against key opposition, those 6-pointers in and around your opposition, to get you back into contention and get maybe a wild card spot. Plus, you know what, you'll have waiver priority. So, you know what, make the most of it. And I see people giving up at 1 and 5 because they feel like they can't come back from it. But you can come back from this. And someone I'm going to target here, again, I think he was okay with me using this. This is Ed. His team is interesting. There's a few red here because of injuries, but it's not bad. There are some good names on the squad, so let's go through it. Lamar Jackson, Kamara, great week start to this week. These were all clipped at the end of week 6, by the way, so that's why there might be some change there. He's got Ford, Jacoby Myers, CD Lamb, Cole Kmet, Hollywood Brown. We're seeing a lot of the same players here, but maybe in the losing side, that's why we're losing, because we're seeing some of the same players. Kaimi Fairbairn, the Saints, Jordan Love, Najee Harris, Kelly, White, Dobbs, and Devontae Smith. Okay, so he's got some good pieces here. Funny, you see more in losing lineups, having multiple QBs, because you're trying to find something that works, and you keep making it wrong. Like, we'll go into a bit, but I was weighing up between 3 QBs at one point in one of my losing teams. I just need to commit to one, and I think that's something as well. Commit to one, see what you can make out of it. But there are some names on this team: CD, Najee, Smith, Kamara can all be traded for mid-level performers who are going to bring more to your team. Lamar is the biggest one. At the moment, you're just getting just as good a performance out of Sam Howell as you are Lamar, and you're going to get something else in the middle order to support your team and support your other woes. There are so many drop candidates here. Kelly, I've talked about White, Dobbs potentially depending on buy cover. But I would also looking at sniping other players that don't perform in your 5 and 1s in your 6 and 0s lineup. The psychological mind game start. Drop them a text saying, "Oh, but are you really using this guy? You wouldn't mind if I use him. I'm only 1 and 5. I just want to have some fun and be competitive. I don't really want to, destroy your lineup. So I'm not coming after your title." But you are. You just wanted to get into playoffs. That's all you need to come after their title. And remember, someone else's trash can be your treasure. Now, humbling moment here. 0-6. I've never not had a win in any of my leagues, and I do a lot of leagues every year at this point of the season. I am 0-6 in the league of record. I've talked about it already. And my advice to myself is to pray to a higher power, to anyone, to the fancy gods, I don't know. But maybe pray for a good draft next year, because in most drafts, if you come dead last, you're going to get a good draft pick next year. I still think the best position to draft a winning lineup, and it shows on our league of record, is 3rd or 4th. That's where you get the kind of most value in there. But you know what? I wouldn't mind a 1st overall pick next year. If Bijan really breaks out, I can get him next year for 101. I'll do that. But you're playing for pride. You want to be invited back next year and not be the guy who's just like sitting in lineups, or you want to get a little competitive. And you know what? This is possibly the best position to be in, because it's fancy free. You can play and watch Red Zone each week without a care in the world. Just have the players you like in there. Yeah. Oh, Kamara scored. Oh, that's great. He's on my lineup. Yeah, but no one else is. Unfortunately, when you're like me and I've got so many lineups, it's not a position that I can do, because I'm watching and I'm competing against myself in those. Red Zone has become a stressful endeavour. My advice to myself next year is 5 leagues. 5 leagues is a nice medium, and maybe a couple of best balls. But let's look at my lineup. I've already made some moves, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But from this, I had Justin Fields, Joe Mixon, I had Bijan Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Adams, Laporta, Kyron Williams. Ooh, that's tough. So many injuries and so many buys as well. It's brutal. Lots of red on this screen. I've got Sanders at kicker, Lions, Brock Purdy, Anthony Richardson. I think I have on the bench, on the IR spot, Deontay Johnson as well. Yeah, I do. Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously not doing great. Javonte Williams. It's just bad running backs. I haven't done really well. Tyler Lockett and the Jets. Why am I carrying 2 defenses? I hate doing that. I have tried to ship Bijan, successfully done that. D-Hop, Devontae, Laporta, Kyron Williams, Gibbs and Fields. You know what? I think the problem here that I've had... You know what? No, I was going to say stick to one team and do that, because it's easier to root for that, and it is easy to root for that. But that's not why I've lost. I've lost because Justin Fields decided to break his hand halfway through a game. I have scored so few points in this one because of stupid people going off. Like the one time Jahmyr Gibbs goes off, he then goes off. Kyron Williams goes off and then he gets injured. All of that kind of stuff. Like, I can't build a lineup that everyone's doing the right thing at the right time. That's just the pain of fantasy football sometimes. I made a trade. I'm going to have a quick look on here. I did make a trade away with Bijan Robinson with John, who we've had on the show before and we talked about in this week's episode. By the way, if you want to look at all my losses, most of which were with this team, take a look at my TikTok and my Instagram reels. I did a funny little thing where we wear our losses on our sleeves here. But I did a bit of a trade with John. I'm going to have a quick look at what the actual terms were. This is a redraft 10-man, so I opened up to the league and said, you know what, I'm willing to have a bit of a ride taken for me. Actually, I like this move. I'll put it up on screen as well. I did Bijan Robinson away for David Montgomery. Yes, he's injured. It's fine because I've got Jameer Gibbs this week, but I think the upside for him later on is going to be great. Not that I'm really thinking about the playoffs, but I'm thinking maybe I can trade it for him again. And Zay Flowers, who I think is coming into his own. I like that lineup, but I've got loads of trades out here, and I'll flash them up on screen as well if I remember to put those in post. But yeah, if you're at 6-0, pray. That is my number one piece of advice there. So, you know what, hopefully that's given you a view of everything you could be doing in whatever situation you're in. 6-0, 5-1, 4-2, all the way down to the lowly 0-6 like me. But just to recap, if you're 0-6, start thinking about the playoffs, seriously. If you're 5-1, you can probably start thinking about the playoffs. Adapt. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's minor changes because you're just behind. At 4-2, tough position to be in because you've got a lot to lose here. Don't be too cautious, I think is the case. At 3-3, start to throw caution to the wind. Roll those dice. At 2-4, don't panic. Be bold. You've got nothing to lose at this point. And at 1-5, start to panic. But make sure that panic breeds some activity and play possum. Use the psychological mind games. You know, you're not a threat, but you could be still. And at 0-6, pray, but enjoy the game. My last piece of advice, no matter what you're at, don't give up. Learn something. You know, try something out. If you're doing poorly, try some trades. If they fail, doesn't matter. You were still doing poorly. If you're doing well, great. But you know, just try something. Make sure you enjoy this game and keep playing. Is the last piece of advice. Just keep playing because so many people give up at this point in the season, especially people who are new to it and don't really understand the long-term side of things and maybe have written themselves off. You can still have a lot of fun. Disrupting other people's fun. That's something as well. If you get a win against the guy who is nailed on to beat you, it's the best piece. And if that's your first win, that's even better. So that's my advice to you. Thank you so much for listening, watching, however you've consumed this. I didn't do the call to action at the start, but as always, if you can support this show by going on Instagram, X, wherever you can find me, at Rugby with Pads. You can support the pod from a membership point of view. rugbywithpads.com. That'll take you to buy me a coffee where you can get some merch and a membership. We do some extra stuff each week on an email subscription as well. Or you can get the merch that I'm wearing, this kind of stuff. We've got some new designs, which I am going to showcase off in the next couple of episodes. They're just going through the wash at the moment. But we've got I'll flash it up here as well, probably as well if I can. You can support that at store.rugbywithpads.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you listen to this on Saturday, good luck tomorrow. If you listen to this on a Sunday, good luck today. And everyone, I will see you all on the virtual gridiron.